Hi guys, it's Webby and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be having a look at the very latest 2021 Hyundai i30 N-Line Premium. Whilst I was doing a bit of research about the i30, ready for the video today, I found out that it first came out in 2007, which seems just like such a long time ago now. So it comes as no surprise that you see so many of these cars on the road. They're such a popular choice here in Australia. They're one of the top selling small cars and always have been since they first came out. Basically because they've been always such good value for money. Hyundai are famous for putting as much equipment in their cars and selling them for an affordable price that everybody can afford. And that theme continues with this latest version as well. So we're going to have a look around this very latest version for 2021 and just see what you get for your money. If you've seen my recent video of the Kona N-Line Premium, a lot of this stuff is kind of repeated because the Kona is basically similar specifications to this car here with a few minor tweaks between the two different models. If you haven't seen the video, I'll put a link up in the top right hand corner for you, so go and check it out when you get a spare minute. Anyway, back to the i30. So the N-Line Premium sits at the top of the tree in terms of specification for the i30s. There's nothing you can really add to it. All the standard equipment you really want is there, with the odd exclusion, which I'll go through as we talk around the car. But let's start at the front of the car. So this latest version of the i30 actually came out in 2017, and then obviously had a mild facelift to the car we see in front of us today. It's got the recognisable Hyundai front grille, but being this is the sports model on top of the range, you've then got obviously the different styling for the front bumper, these extended sections around by the fog lights, the little lip spoiler that goes around the front, the LED headlights, which is obviously a nice feature to have as well. Under the bonnet we see the same 1.6 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine that we had in the Kona in my last video. In this car it makes 150 kilowatt and 265 newton meters of torque, and is with the same 7-speed dual clutch transmission that we found in the Kona. So it's a familiar unit that obviously Hyundai use in some of their other cars, and I have to say it's quite impressive. Fuel consumption's rated at 7.1 for this car, and that's exactly what I've achieved in the week I've had the car, which is quite remarkable when most cars go over that figure. So to actually get a car that gets exactly what it says on the official figures from the manufacturer is quite rare. And I haven't babied it, I haven't sort of pootled around and driving it gently. I've just driven it normally as I would every other car. So yeah, I've been quite impressed that this has actually achieved what the manufacturer said it would do. So coming round to the side of this N-Line Premium, we've got standard 18-inch alloy wheels, which is really nice to see. Just a couple of sort of N-Line badges either side of the car. We've got black door mirrors, which is actually quite a nice touch. Just gives it a bit of a sporty accent, I suppose. All the window surrounds are just sort of satin black as opposed to chrome on some of the other models. We've got a standard panoramic sunroof, which is another nice sort of feature to have. Some manufacturers will obviously charge you more money for that, so it's nice to see that included. Coming around to the back of the car, and the sporty theme continues. This lower section diffuser is different to the other models in the range, and you've got this little sort of chrome strip at the bottom. Now having a look inside the boot, we find a very generous 397 litres of carrying capacity. If we fold the rear seats down, that extends to 1300 litres, which is really impressive for such a small car. Now obviously this car's got keyless entry push button start, as you'd imagine for a top of the range car, but it does this quirky little thing that as soon as you start walking up to the car, it unfolds the door mirrors but the doors aren't unlocked, which I'm kind of not sure why they do that, don't know. I'll show you, see if I can get the car to do it. There you go, unfolds the door mirrors. How cool is that? The one thing I do find frustrating about the keyless entry though, is you have to push the button to unlock it. You can't just put your hand on the door handle and unlock the door. You actually have to push the button to actually open it. First world problems, I know, but most other cars that I've driven or got into, if they've got keyless entry, you just put your hand on the door handle and it opens. It's a strange way of doing things, but I think Hyundai do that on all their cars, because the Kona that I did last week, with the review last week, was exactly the same. So before we get inside the i30, if you're enjoying this video, then hit the like button. It helps other people find the video and helps YouTube recommend it to other people as well, which will obviously help the channel grow. The more the channel grows, the more opportunities I get to get cars like this from manufacturers like Hyundai, BMW that I've had recently as well. So it will help me sort of grow the channel. It will help me bring more cars to you guys for watching, and everybody gains basically. So yeah, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, etc, etc. You know what to do. Let's have a look at the inside, shall we? So as I've mentioned a couple of times, this is very similar to the specification of the Kona N-Line Premium from my previous video. So we find similar sports seats which are electrically adjustable on the driver's side, but unlike the Kona, the passenger side is actually manually operated, but they are both heated and air conditioned, so we still keep those functions, which is nice to see. But in terms of comfort, really comfortable. Yeah, having an electric adjustment makes a big difference, because you can just get that really sort of accurate adjustment. So looking at some of the other features in this i30, we've got an infinity sound system. So Hyundai are really upping their game in terms of their speaker setups in their cars these days. We've got this lovely leather interior, beautiful leather wrapped steering wheel, and the benefit of the steering wheel in this car is it actually gets paddles where the Kona didn't, so you get the up and down shift paddles for the gear changes. So we've got the lovely digital display in the centre of the dashboard there. It is slightly different to the one in the Kona, which was fully digital. Well, on the i30 we've got the manual rev counter on the left, and on the right hand side you've got your fuel and temperature gauges. But the central screen is all digital, which is actually quite nice to see. The other thing you don't get in the i30 is the head-up display. I'm not quite sure why you don't get that in the i30, but that's the thing that you only get in the Kona. But if you've never had one, then you wouldn't miss out on it. The infotainment system in the centre of the dashboard is very similar to the one in the Kona as well. It's a 10.25 inches display. It runs built-in satellite navigation, as well as Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so very similar in that respect. As we come down the centre console, we find dual zone climate control, so we've got separate temperatures for driver and passenger. And then further down there, similar to the Kona, we've got a 12-volt power socket, a USB, and also a wireless charging pad. So it's nice to have a choice of how you want to charge your phone. So because this is the N-Line model, we can see we've got some nice red seat belts which match with all sort of the red detailing and stitching on the seats, which then also carry around to the gear selector as well. So I actually quite like these little red touches inside the cabin. Just gives it a little bit of colour, which is quite nice. So then what you can see down next to the gear stick is obviously your heated and air conditioned seats, parking sensors, your cameras, and then also your drive mode selection button there as well. When you come inside the back of the i30, this is where it starts to feel a little bit small. You haven't got heaps and heaps of leg room. I'm only 5'6", and the front seat is in my driving position. So if you had a 6-foot driver and a 6-foot passenger, I think things might be a little bit cosy. It's certainly not as big in the back here as something like a Ford Focus. You also don't get much space to stretch your legs out to put your feet underneath the driver's seat as well. Where some cars actually can stretch your legs out a little bit further. So if you're on a long journey, it just means your legs aren't sort of getting tired and cramped after a little while. Even though we've got the sunroof, which is standard on this car, yeah, headroom's a little bit tight as well, because you do feel like you're sitting up slightly higher than the people in the front of the car. The upside to that is you actually get really good visibility because you're sitting a little bit higher. So you can see out the front of the car really well. You've got good side visibility as well because you've got decent sized windows. And having that sunroof lets heaps and heaps of light into the car. So it actually feels nice and light and airy inside the back of the car. We do get some rear vents, which is nice to see. And you've got this little sort of red stripe around the edge, like we do for the ones in the front of the car as well. As you expect, we've got a fold down armrest with a couple of cup holders here in the middle. The two outer rear seats have got the ISOFIX child seat fixings as well. Right, so now we've had a bit of a look around the car, let's go and take it for a drive and I'll share my thoughts with you on what I think it's like behind the wheel. Right, so the i30 N-Line Premium, what's it like to drive? That's what we're going to do next. The first obvious things I can sort of notice compared to the Kona N-Line I was driving last week is that the engine and gearbox seem to work a lot better together. I mentioned in that Kona video that the engine felt like it had a bit of turbo lag and didn't really work, or the turbo didn't work until it got above 2000 revs, and that the gearbox wasn't really that much in tune with what the engine was doing. But I have to say, the i30 feels like a completely different car to drive. The engine and gearbox are just so much better suited to each other. One of the first things you notice as you start driving is how weighted the steering is. A lot of power steering in cars these days is so light you don't really have much connection with what's happening with the front wheels. But I have to say this is probably one of the most weighted systems I've used in a long time. It's just got such a nice amount of feel to it, you really feel like you're connected to the front wheels. I'm going to say it almost feels heavy at first until you get a bit used to it. It almost feels like a warm hatchback, not quite a hot hatchback like the i30N, but 150 kilowatt from this engine gives you a decent amount of shove when you want to overtake, go up a hill, have a bit of fun. It's a good engine and gearbox combination. I'm really impressed. Almost to the point that it feels the opposite of what was in the Kona. So the gearbox is so much better than the Kona, and it's not trying to get into like top gear by the time you hit 60 k's an hour. It's actually holding onto gears a lot longer, which I like. Plus you get the paddles behind the steering wheel, so it's definitely got that sort of hot hatch type of feel to it. So yeah, just a completely different car. When you compare it against its biggest competition, cars like the Mazda 3, the Ford Focus, Volkswagen Golf, Toyota Corolla, it's actually got the best power output, 150 kilowatt, where the maximum from one of the others is 134 from the Focus. As we know, the i30N, the top of the range fire breathing hot hatch, is going to have a dual clutch transmission soon, but obviously that's going to be quite expensive. So if your budget doesn't really allow to go as high as that, this is a really good alternative. And it's probably better day to day as well, because it's a little bit more subdued, will have a softer ride. So it's a really good all-round package, this N-Line Premium. Ride quality is really good as well. Even on these 18-inch alloys, it's really comfortable. When you hit the odd pothole, you obviously feel it, but that's in any car. The ride is, yeah, so really nice and comfortable, but throw it around a corner and it handles superbly. It's got a really good chassis. It's been tuned in Australia, which makes a big difference as well. The fact that it's been tuned for our roads, which can be a bit sketchy at times. Once you drive one of these, you can actually understand why Hyundai sell so many i30s and why you see so many on the road. It's just a good little car to drive. And this N9, I think, is probably the best model in the range, because you genuinely get enough performance to use every day without having to go to the N model. But obviously much more than you get in the base model. I actually reckon if they put this software tune from the engine and gearbox from the i30 onto the Kona would be such a better car to drive, because this is day and night so much better than the Kona in terms of like the engine and gearbox are sort of talking to each other. The same traits that I had in the Kona are also carried over to this i30 as well. So every time you get in the car, you've got to turn on the automatic hold handbrake, and every time you get in the car, you've you've got to turn off the lane keeping aid. I wish there was a way you could turn them on and off and leave them on and off, and not keep them to it every time you get in the car, because I do find it quite annoying. But it's one of those things that you just get in, press a couple of buttons and off you go every time. It would just be nice if you could save it under your driver profiles. I don't think it would stop me buying one of these, because at the end of the day it's only a minor irritation. I am surprised that you don't get blind spot monitoring on this car though. It's got all the other safety stuff you'd want. I have to say it's lovely and quiet when you're on the freeway. Considering you're riding on 18-inch wheels, there's no real sort of tyre noise, there's no wind noise. They've done a fantastic job in its packaging and the way it drives. I'm really, really impressed with this. And to think it only costs around $40,000. So it's $6,000 cheaper than the Kona that I had last week. Okay, it's front wheel drive instead of four wheel drive, but even in a Kona, how often are you going to use the four wheel drive system? But I'd save £6 and buy one of these, I reckon. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I like hatchbacks. I don't mind SUVs, but I just like this car more than I like the Kona. I think it's because you can, I don't know, you can have a little bit more fun with it. The engine and gearbox are so much better. Yeah, you can genuinely sort of throw around some twisty lanes and have some fun. But at the same time, it's a great daily driver and good little family car. So yeah, in summary, yeah, I think it's great. Cracking little car. So that's the video on the 2021 Hyundai i30 N-Line Premium. I've actually quite enjoyed the week with the car. Really, really impressed with it. As I said, when I'm driving, I love the way it drives, the steering, etc, etc. So if you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to find out every time a new video comes out. If you've got any questions or comments about the car, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Also, let me know what you think. Would you buy an i30, or would you buy a similar small hatch like a Golf, Corolla or Mazda 3? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Again, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.